Hey everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. I'm a writer at Geek Vibes Nation, and I'm also the author of The Ultimate Guide to Strange Cinema.
And I'm Dylan Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for geekvibesnation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast.
And welcome to the Video Addict, but not a new release roundup. We are doing something a little bit different. We are highlighting a Kino series that we really like. That is from the Cohen Film Collection, and they do a really interesting kind of deep dive into obscure foreign films mostly. And we are both pretty big fans. And so we're going to be just kind of going back and forth, talking about some of these releases. And, maybe that will give you some inspiration into checking these out yourself.
For sure.
So, first we're going to talk about this double feature from Patrice Leconte. I hope I'm saying that right.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a double feature, Felix and Lola and Love Street. One's from 2001 and then 2002. So what did you think of these? We'll just kind of kick it off.
Sure. One of these I really liked. The other I was kind of more mixed on. I really like Felix and Lola. I thought that was a lot of fun. I love seeing a young Charlotte Gainsborough, and I like kind of like it threw me some twists and turns that I really appreciated. It has like kind of a mysterious element of just like a kind of like a loner figure, like two misfits coming together and just kind of like some of the mysteries of the past. But Love Street, that was more an inconsistent run for me, just because the narrative never really hooked me, of just kind of like this a reflection on this kind of brothel, which I enjoyed kind of the communal aspects of like this brothel, but just seeing the kind of like I just was never completely engaged in the narrative of this woman and like that potentially made it good out of the brothel and like the challenges that were faced. It just never really hooked me. But Felix and Lola I really like. So it was one really good, one was kind of more mixed for me. What about you?
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. I definitely like Felix and Lola more. I love how I don't know if you got this vibe, but it kind of almost felt like it was sort of a reflection of the Hollywood indie new wave of like say Tarantino or Gus Van Sant. It had that kind of air of like cool and like visually striking. I mean, obviously, like he's been working since the 60s and his stuff is always kind of known for being beautiful, but it kind of had that kind of late 90s, early 2000s sort of like again, just like and almost like a Jim Jarmusch movie where it's just too cool for words. Also bumper cars.
Yeah.
Like, how bad of an idea is that? Um,
Just jarring the hell out of yourself?
yeah, and I mean, I never really thought about it, but like, it's just like putting yourself in mini car crashes for fun.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
wonder if
It's
that
it's a
even is still.
blast.
Yeah. So I did some quick Googling, and of course, doctors do not recommend that you do bumper cars, but I don't know. Leave a comment below. Are there still bumper cars? Is that things that people still like to do? I don't know. Um, One thing I will say about Felix and Lola is I you're spot on. It does have a better hook, I think. There's sort of an engaging mystery. Lola is very beguiling. She almost kind of reminds me of like maybe like a like Kristen Stewart kind of type.
I could definitely see that. Yeah.
There's that beautiful, visually striking scene where it's like after hours at the bumper cars and she's smoking. There's a lot of smoking in this movie, both movies,
Yeah.
just all of it. But anyways, it's just this like beautifully lit like nighttime scene. Like, you can like I don't know, everything about it is just such a vibe. I love it. It's just, I think that kind of sums up this movie. It's very beautiful. It's very like mysterious in a way. The ending is definitely not like the most enthralling, but I think it fits in this movie like tonally. Yeah, so like Love Street, I didn't find it as engaging. Like I would definitely agree with you on that, but like I will say the costumes, the production design, I really thought were top notch. Like it really put me in that time and place. Um, it made me very uncomfortable with the kid in a brothel.
Yeah.
I was like, ugh. But
He was
yeah,
born in it. He's he's part of the environment. That's what he grew up
yeah,
in.
it's still like yikes. But I
Yeah.
get what they were going for. So it was, it is what it is. But yeah, I do like this as a double feature. Again, I think like thematically they fit really well. And I do like how one was like released one after the other. So yeah, really interesting discovery. Felix and Lola I would for sure watch again. The other one, maybe not so much.
Yeah, but it did make me want to seek out more from this director because I'm not sure if
Mhm.
I've ever seen anything from them before. But I was just like, oh, I like this style. Like, even like Love Street, which I didn't like. I didn't love it, but it had enough there that I was like, ooh, like between that and Felix and Lola, I was like, I'd like to see more from this director.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The next one is one that I was really excited about, and that was The Good Boss.
Mhm.
So, what was your take and kind of initial impression of this movie?
Sure. Yeah. I reviewed this for the site a couple weeks ago. I really liked it. I think this is one of Javier Bardem's like best performances I've seen from him in a while. I like how it kind of sometimes has almost like an office like feel, like the Steve Carell. Like he's a boss who wants to really be like appreciated and admired, but he's not completely like the whole movie is about like basically like unfair like labor practices and like how like the balance between like basically just like capitalism in general. But I think it does a nice balance of like having like that dark humor with like actually like pure dramatics. And like I said, this is one of Bardem's best performances in a while.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with all of that. I mean, it is definitely wickedly dark comedy. There are a lot of really great twists and turns. I love how, constantly, Bardez's character wants to be a good boss, but he keeps putting his thumb on the scale, literally and figuratively, since this is about scales. I also really love how, maybe it's a little bit on the nose, but I like how the scale is never quite balanced. Like in the I guess it's like leading up to the actual plant, there's a scale there that is always not quite balanced. And I love how there's a nice payoff to that at the end, but it definitely metaphorically kind of sums up the movie nicely, even though again it's maybe rather a bit too on the nose. But yeah, this is great. Yeah, Bardez is a fantastic in this. Yeah, again, I'd have to agree. I think this is maybe like one of his best performances, maybe sans No Country for Old Men. And he doesn't have to have that ridiculous wig on. So there's that.
He gets to have another wig on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could go on and on about how much I love this movie, but I will say that like I love how like for example, like him and his like friend, that have like a childhood past. And I like how, there's very fundamentally different recollections
Yeah.
that kind of skew um, this relationship. And I think that's a really interesting thing about the unreliable narrator. And you're always the hero of your own story. so a lot of that is played with in really interesting ways. And I to a degree I liked all of these movies, but I think this was like far and away my favorite.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's a really good one. It is definitely like uh that's like the most recent one for sure, and it's uh deserves a wider audience.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's got a lot of buzz, and it has a really pretty high Rotten Tomatoes score. So yeah, you should all should check it out. My next one is another Patrice Leconte movie, and that is Monsieur Hire.
Mhm.
And boy, I this was a wild one. So I would say this is kind of like thriller-ish. Um, but it's very weird. What do you what's your like initial impressions of this movie?
Yeah, this is one I messaged you about, and I was like, I just watched this. I really loved it. I'm not sure if anyone else will really love it, but I thought it was really good. It's one of my favorites that we're talking about this week, or at least on this episode. So I don't know. I just really liked how it did throw you. It's not. It is kind of has thriller elements, like you said, but it's really not. It's more of just like a dramatic movie about this weird loner who people like believe to be like a certain way, and just like the his it deals with like kind of voyeuristic tendencies, but it manifests in some really interesting ways and how people kind of use one another. But then there's also some romance in here and like longing and like sympathy for characters you might not expect. I don't know. It really unfolds in really interesting ways, which I like. When it kind of started off more sleazy, it kind of evolved into some more interesting ways where I was like, oh, I was not expecting that, but I really liked it.
Yeah, it's definitely a beautiful looking film, and I love how it's very like detached almost. Like there's an iciness about it that I thought was really fascinating, especially with, as you were saying, like the more like voyeuristic elements. And yeah, it's like the guy is such a creeper, also.
Yeah.
Like, but I mean, again, the movie frames it really interesting because he's not like I don't think he's necessarily framed as necessarily like a bad person, but just he does creepy, maybe off-putting things. But yeah, I don't want to spoil too much about it, but yeah, it does it just had this like otherworldly quality that I thought was really fascinating. Like just like in the way it flowed, in the way the narrative moved, especially how it was like shot. And the restoration looks really great. I know this was a title that a lot of people were anticipating, that are like big into French cinema. So, yeah, check it out. It does have some nice bonus features. So they didn't just plop this out. They actually put some nice work into it. So, yeah, I thought it was really interesting. That's another one I would definitely revisit.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it starts out, there are some kind of elements I was like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm completely on board with this. But then whenever certain things are revealed later, I was like, oh, this makes sense, and like I'm on board. So yeah, definitely check it out. I agree. It also looks really good. So for
Yeah.
sure.
So my next one is A Knife in the Head, which is a heck of a title.
Mhm.
And there's the back. So yeah, this was another one that was like very weird. Like again, thriller, maybe more traditionally a thriller, but again, not really. So let me get to my notes. Sorry. So this, yeah, this definitely is one that kind of like snuck up on me, but what did you think of it?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I liked how it's kind of dealing with issues of like kind of like unreliable like narratives, because this is about a man who at the very beginning is like shot in the head, but he doesn't die. He like he loses his memory when he wakes up, and he's being told that he was like in, active in like a terrorist plot, that he was a terrorist. But then you also, it's kind of like more of a mystery of like what was the truth behind like what he was involved in, which is a very engaging narrative. I was more hot and cold with like what happens in between like that beginning and like kind of learning more about what actually happened. But there are some really interesting character moments. It was just a little bit overly long for me, but there were I'm a little bit mixed on it. What about you?
Yeah, so I thought there were definitely some like fascinating elements, but yeah, I think that they do like go into excruciating lengths to like show you this guy's recovery, and like part of that I appreciate because what I've read online, it's a pretty accurate depiction of like what somebody like that would actually kind of go through, especially with like recovery. And but yeah, I just thought it kind of kept the pace a little wonky. But yeah, as you say, then it kind of picks up and it's definitely more interesting and engaging. It's just the beginning is a little saggy.
Mhm.
Like I appreciate them going into the detail. It's almost like it's almost like in a methodical kind of way where it's just like if this was a book, I would say this is overwritten. Like it didn't need to go into that much detail with like his recovery and everything like that. There are some just really weird moments. Like I think like if I plowed through these pretty quickly, but I distinctly remember him naked and just playing with himself while he's being interviewed.
Yeah. Yeah, and just like him trying to like regain like there were some moments like him trying to regain kind of like his sexual faculties and stuff and like him at like I don't know his relationship with other women in the movie. There were some moments that I was just like I know you're recovering and like but like there's some weird things going on here and like there's some like kind of like assaulty things going on and I was just
Yeah,
like I don't know like no but
some boundary issues. Yeah.
yeah, for sure yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, again, this also it doesn't say it's a new restoration, but again looks really good. I know this was another title that a lot of people were really interested in. So it's nice that it's out. This does have a director interview and an interview with the producer. So again, it's not just like plopped out. It has some nice features if you're interested in it. Yeah, it's very unconventional, but I enjoyed it overall. But yeah, I think we both agree that the pacing is a little wonky. So the next one is Entre Nous. Am I saying that right?
Sure, because I'm
Yeah.
French. I know.
um, but yeah, so this was another one that I just went in completely cold. But I read a synopsis and I don't feel like it kind of captured what it actually was about. But we'll get into that more. What did you think?
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. This is we're also going to talk about another one with Isabelle Huppert showing up in a very small role. But I was very excited to check this out because of Isabelle Huppert. But I did really quite enjoy this. I think it's an interesting journey of just like trying to live your best life and like not being trapped like you talked about like being trapped in these little boxes like for a previous title we were talking about but I think that might have actually been on our previous episode but a lot of recording today but just about like the longing and desire to like not be trapped in what like where you are but the circumstances of the time, especially where this takes place, like being as it was, not always giving to like live your honest self and stuff, which I found really interesting. And there's a lot going on here. But what about you? What do you think about it?
Yeah, so what I really like so I love period dramas. So it had me there. But then I thought it was really interesting because like there's a really nice, strong female friendship, which of course leads into a romance, which is something that not a lot of the plot summaries kind of I feel like conveyed. but it's interesting because I could definitely see this movie laying the groundwork work for movies like Carol and Portrait of a Woman on Fire, where it's this like really beautiful and at times like intense relationship, but this seemed almost like it was kind of like paving the way for like movies that are kind of just now really starting to be kind of in vogue. So I like how it really plays up different aspects of the time period. It's not just centrally about their relationship, but at the very core it is. And I like how it kind of play with that dynamic. Like, it was like about their home life and their kids, but then, throughout it, it's like they were the constant like thing coming together, which I liked.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's beautifully shot. It's one of those movies that it's hard not to just get completely absorbed in it, like really it just envelops you like that. So yeah, I liked it. I thought it was great. It's very well acted, again, very well shot. I was so this is as stated there, it's a new 4K transfer, looks really nice. I think that there was some a little bit overly grainy, but not too much. Never was distracting, and I think that that also might just be because it's like an early '80s film, and maybe by virtue of what they had film element wise. But yeah, it looks great. I mean, I don't have any other releases to compare this to, but just looking at it, I can tell that this is probably a pretty big upgrade. So yeah, I liked it. I like movies like this and Carol and Portrait of a Woman on Fire. So like yeah, give me more of those.
Yeah, absolutely. I that was a good discovery for me for sure.
Yeah, so the final title that we're going to be talking about together is God, this one is wild. Going
Yeah.
Places. And oh boy, there's so much to unpack here. But what did you think?
Who, yeah, like you said, I watched this last night and it was a time. It is not for the faint of heart, especially if you like women. But it's a lot. It was interesting to see a young Gerard Depardieu because I've only seen him kind of like bigger when like he's older, but he was kind of more like chiseled and like young and vibrant and stuff. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like I haven't seen him like this. Um, it almost kind of played like a road trippy. This is gonna be a weird comparison, but almost like Clockwork Orangey, but like not that bad. But just
Yeah.
like these like two guys just going through life, just like kind of fucking shit up, but like just like being like horrible and like harassing people. And there are some scenes that like I did find really interesting, but then there were also the scenes where I was just like, what is going on? I did find it very interesting that like if like people who are watching this, if they were like identifying with these people, maybe they would like realize like one of the messages of the movie is like if you want to like really like be with a woman or like satisfy a woman, like just be nice to her and like just like listen to her and like just don't treat her like a piece of meat and maybe you'll get farther in life. But I like that message was thrown in there. But there's a lot of things that are really weird with this movie.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you compared this to Clockwork Orange because in my notes I actually wrote like Clockwork Orange Light,
Yeah.
where it definitely isn't like, I mean, what they do is awful, but it's definitely not in the same realm, I think, as like Alex and his Droogs. Like, it's not like that intense, even though I don't want to sugarcoat it either. I mean, they do assault women.
Mhm.
Um, but it's weird because the movie kind of frames it as they're like rapscallions. They're not like they're just kind of misunderstood. And I mean, I think that that could be a big barrier for a lot of people, a lot of people like trying to get into this movie. Which again, I don't blame you, but I think what kind of saves it is I think that they do, I mean, the actors are so charismatic, um, and the tone is so strange that it almost kind of, I don't want to say forgives it, but it almost softens it, even though that's kind of messed up to say. I mean, it's weird because I'm trying to explain this movie, and you know because you've
Yeah.
seen it, but it's like there's this tug and pull of like different tones that it's kind of weird to.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you kind of the movie asks you kind of to like sympathize with the characters, but then like also they're horrible and they say that what they're doing is bad, but it's like, is it really that bad? But yeah, it's very bad, especially the way this movie leaves off. I won't like spoil it, but like I mentioned Isabelle Huppert for the previous movie. She's very young in this movie, and like what happens to her character, like I can't even I can't explain it because I don't want to spoil it, but it's just like how it's just like viewed as like a like look, they did her a favor, and I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
What is going on? It's wild.
Uh, yeah, it's definitely very weird, but it was an interesting discovery, and I don't I don't subscribe to movies having to be moral, or necessarily have to give you like life lessons. But yeah, it does kind of ask a lot for its audience to sort of like these characters that are clearly doing awful things, and I don't feel like like the filmmakers are necessarily excusing that, but in a way they're kind of asking you to sort of just ignore it or at least soften it. So it's always kind of a weird off kilter place, but I think the tone is so weird and lyrical that I almost feel like it weirdly doesn't bother me. Like that's a kind of juxtaposition.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely kind of inconsistent. Like I think it should have taken more of a neutral tone rather than being like they're not so bad. Like they're not that bad. Like I don't know. It just kind of seemed to undercut things. Like it kind of left a kind of bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, and that's completely valid. Like I again, it's like even though I liked I find it hard to sort of like completely love it because of that. And okay, so I guess the next couple titles I have not seen, but you have, so I'm gonna let you take it away from here.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to go through a couple of titles that these are the December Cohen releases that just came out, and there's some good stuff in here, and I think you should definitely check most of these out. I would say. Um, this first one was really interesting. Uh, a fish in the bathtub, because this one is directed by Joan Micklin Silver, who did Hester Street, which you talked about much earlier
Mm.
this year. But this is once again like more of a Jewish focused tale. It stars Jerry Stiller and Mira, Ben Stiller's real life parents, who were a famous comedy duo for years and years. And so this is them together. Also stars Mark Ruffalo, Jane Addams, and Missy Yeager. So this came out, I believe, it was in '98, and it's a really interesting tale about basically Jerry Stiller and Amir are like your prototypical like Jewish like older couple. He's kind of like abrasive and always yelling and stuff and trying to driving her crazy. But like one night it really comes to a head, and like she moves out of the house and moves in with their son, played by Mark Ruffalo, and just kind of like how kind of that impacts the whole family, like how like Jerry Stiller has to kind of like deal with the fact that he might not be completely in the right all the time like he is, like with his like abrasive personality, and then just like there's other stuff going on with the family, like dramatic things of like Mark Ruffalo is considering having an affair with one of his clients and all this type of stuff. It's really like it's like darkly funny, but it's never too like mean spirited dark. It's more of like a I guess it's kind of like that typical like Jewish humor. Like there's a lot of like I've noticed in a lot of like Jewish stories, like there's kind of like a sense of just like resignation to like oh, bad things are going to happen, but like you kind of have to laugh about it. So it's like kind of that kind of like darker humor, but like there is an undercurrent of like love underneath. But it's a really interesting, really funny movie. Like has a really particular sense of humor, which I really appreciate. And this restoration's really nice. And you do have a Q&A with Joan and the producer, which runs about 27 minutes. So that's really cool. So this is one of the few like English speaking titles we're talking about today. So I do recommend that. It was a really fun time overall. My next title, it's another twofer. This is from the films of Raphael D. Silver. This is On the Yard and A Walk on the Moon. And so On the Yard is basically it's, I think both of these are English speaking as well. This has John Hurt as like the lead character. This is like basically a standard prison drama where John Hurt is coming into this like larger ecosystem where Thomas G. Waits here, he's kind of like runs the show and doesn't really know how to function outside of prison. And just kind of that dynamic of just like exploring this kind of prison experience and the typical dramas you would find in that. Overall, as a prison drama, I think it's pretty solid. I was entertained. This isn't like as gritty as something like Escape from Alcatraz, which we've talked about recently, but it's really solid and entertaining. And if you like John Hurt, he does a really nice job in here. But overall, it's pretty good. Not groundbreaking, but pretty good. A Walk on the Moon. This is about basically humanitarian efforts in Colombia, I believe. Like there's two brothers who are like going down to Colombia. One is already there, one comes later, and is kind of like getting acclimated to the area, and eventually falls in love with one of the locals. So it's kind of like this dramatic conflict where one brother, he's it's like a conflicting of like falling in love with the country where they are at, and also not being able to like the one of the other brothers not really being adrift in life and not really knowing what he wants to do besides just like kind of be a slacker and just like live life as a king amongst these locals whenever he's really just kind of like a screw up everywhere else. So this one's kind of hard to explain. There's a lot going on here with like different character dynamics and brotherly dynamics and husband and wife dynamics. There's a lot going on, but once again, I think this is a pretty solid drama. It's also there's some very sad stuff that happens in here, but it's overall very narratively engaging. So this twofer, I would say they're about equal, honestly. Like they both like I think On the Yard is probably a little bit stronger overall, but it's more conventional. But this A Walk on the Moon is more, it's a different, more experience, but not quite as strong overall. So overall, both pretty good. This one only has a trailer, so no real special features, but both look pretty solid. I enjoyed it. Have you seen either of these before?
I have not, but I've heard good things about A Walk on the Moon, so I might probably try to pick that up sometime.
Oh yeah, I think you'd like them. I think both of the last two you would especially like. This next one, I know you told me offline that you were interested in my thoughts on this, and this is my final one. This is the Ballad of Sad Cafe, and it is wild. So this has Vanessa Redgrave, Keith Carradine, and Rod Steiger. So basically, I'm not even sure what time period. This is just sometime in the past. Vanessa Redgrave is like basically, it's almost like she's queen of the bayou of Louisiana. But she's kind of like, she runs this cafe. She is kind of like over all of these locals. Basically, she runs a moonshining distillery, but she kind of like keeps, it's not so much malevolently, but also it is kind of, if you think about it, kind of keeping the local population under her thumb by keeping them plowed with moonshine and trying to like mostly making them dependent on it so that they like do a lot of work and then they go spend all their money with her and she kind of just like rules over it and stuff until one day her life is upended when her cousin, I think it's like a long lost cousin, comes into the fold where I think he technically he suffers from dwarfism. He's kind of a weird character. He's both very excited to like have a family and be like a part of something larger, but he's also very, I don't know how to explain this. He's very opportunistic and he's like very, he wants to like be liked by everyone and he often finds himself like playing the fool, like playing up his disabilities for the amusement of others, and which is kind of weird. And then Keith Carradine comes into the plot as like a potential love interest for Vanessa Redgrave, and that the whole trio dynamic between the three is insane. And I would just say like this isn't giving anything away, but like one of like the culminating moments of this movie is like a like a like a like a big fist fight between Vanessa Redgrave and Keith Carradine, which I was not expecting to see. Wow. This knockdown drag out fist fight between those two. I was just like, what is going on? It was like a boxing match, like, but like it was, people were cheering on and stuff, and it was wild. But like, there's so many characters I did not like in this movie. It's hard to recommend it, but it is like an odd, fascinating movie. But like, I wanted to reach out and like wring some of these people's necks. I was like, who are you? What are you doing? So it's this weird, like swampy Southern Gothic drama with a lot of oddball characters and then like weaselly characters, and it's a whole thing. And I didn't even really talk about Rod Steiger, but like he's doing his own thing over here. It's a movie. It's not one of my favorites, but it is like one of the more like WTF ones that I watched out of all of these. It's just it's a thing.
Yeah, no, that so I saw a trailer for this and it kind of made me almost feel like a little like Wake and Fright. Have you ever seen that one? The Australian film.
Yeah.
Maybe not as bonkers because that movie's pretty crazy, but the way you're saying it, the way you're describing it sounds pretty crazy, so maybe.
Yeah.
But if you get a chance, check out Wake and Fright. That's a really good one. It's probably streaming somewhere.
Nice.
But that one is just about like losing your mind with alcohol, and it's basically a teacher that has a lost weekend. And I won't get into more of that, but Donald Pleasance is in it, and he is always kind of a weird character, but he is a madman in this. It's pretty crazy. But anyways, yeah, so that was a lot of fun. Again, that was something a little different that we were trying. If y'all like this, we can definitely maybe do something similar to this again. It's always fun to kind of highlight these movies because again, they're so weird and varied and interesting, but maybe would fly under the radar. So that's the kind of stuff we love highlighting. So if you enjoyed this, definitely consider giving it a like. Again, comment, tell us what you think about these titles. What are some of your favorite Cohen titles from the past, or like what's something upcoming that you're really excited for? And definitely, as always, thanks for hanging out with us.